We've got balls.
Alabama is a monstrosity, a juggernaut, a dynasty, and the greatest power college football has ever seen. From Scott to Wade to Thomas to Bryant to Stallings to Saban, the Crimson Tide has not just simply dominated the game, they've owned it. But despite over 900 wins, 18 national championship victories, and 4 Heisman winners, only one man has achieved the title of first overall pick, and his name is Harry Gilmer. A Birmingham native, Gilmer arrived in Tuscaloosa in 1944, and by his sophomore season, he was a staple of the Alabama offense, dominating the college ranks as both a rusher and passer, leading the nation in touchdowns through the air and on the ground, while gaining a total of 1,457 yards, the second most in the country that year. In 1945, Alabama finished the year undefeated and took down 11th-ranked USC in the Rose Bowl, 34-14. This was the final bowl victory of the legendary head coach Frank Thomas's career, as he resigned following the season due to his declining health. Meanwhile, Gilmer for his efforts was named Rose Bowl MVP, but this wasn't the only hardware populating his trophy case, as at the conclusion of his sophomore season, he took home both All-SEC and All-American honors and won SEC Player of the Year. He also finished 5th in Heisman voting. Unfortunately, instead of building off the success of his 1945 season, Gilmer struggled as a junior, completing just 43% of his passes, 20 points lower than the previous season. He only passed for 5 touchdowns and threw 10 interceptions compared to just 3 in his sophomore season. And on the ground, he didn't fare much better, as his yards per attempt were nearly cut in half to just 3.7 yards per carry, and he only scored 2 touchdowns. Needless to say, Gilmer's poor play translated to the rest of the team as well, and the Crimson Tide went just 7-4 and failed to reach a bowl game for the first time in 5 years. But like all great players, Gilmer bounced back and led Alabama to an 8-3 record and a 6th place finish in the AP poll. Unfortunately, the Crimson Tide's third and final loss of the season came at the hands of 5th-ranked Texas in the Sugar Bowl. Though he didn't collect as many accolades his senior season in comparison to his sophomore year, Gilmer managed to once again receive some Heisman votes. The team selecting first that season was the Washington Redskins, who weren't quite the worst team in the league, but they were still far from contenders despite having one of the most potent offenses in the game, led by Sammy Baugh, who even at the age of 33 managed to have his best season as a passer with career highs in yardage, completions, and touchdowns. The problem for Washington was their defense, who allowed a league-high 367 points. The large discrepancy between the offense and defense makes it a bit confusing why the team decided to go with a mainly offensive player in Gilmer with the top pick. Not to mention the fact that though a decent runner, Gilmer seemed better suited as a passer, making this addition feel even more questionable. Over his first few seasons, Gilmer started a handful of games at quarterback and went to his first Pro Bowl in 1950 despite going 0-5 while under center. In 1952, he took more of a rushing role with a career-high 100 carries for 508 yards from scrimmage. And he remained in a similar role throughout the rest of his time in Washington despite the retirement of Sammy Baugh following the 1952 season. At the conclusion of the 1954 season, Gilmer was traded to Detroit in exchange for 2 players, but despite the Pro Bowls, the former top pick's 7-year stint with Washington could have been considered a letdown, as the Redskins finished above 500 only twice in that span. As a member of the Lions, Gilmer played alongside the legendary Bobby Lane, but unfortunately his timing couldn't have been any worse, as the 2 seasons he played in Detroit were the only 2 in a span of 6 years where the Lions didn't at least make the playoffs, despite winning 9 games in 1956. Following that season, Gilmer announced his retirement. About a decade later, Gilmer returned to Detroit as the head coach of the Lions as the successor of George Wilson, who had served as an assistant while Gilmer played for them. Initially, things looked good for Gilmer as a head coach, as the squad kicked off the 1965 season with a 3-0 record. However, they'd only managed 2 more victories over the course of the final 11 games. On a positive note, the Lions finished with the top defense in the league, but on the other end of things, they sported the second worst offense. In year 2, Gilmer and the Lions didn't fare much better, finishing with a record of just 4-9-1, tied for last in their division. And not only did the Lions' offense remain one of the league's worst, but the defense also sank to similar depths as the 4th worst in the game. Needless to say, Gilmer was unceremoniously fired at the conclusion of the season and finished with a record of 10-16-2. He passed away in 2016 while living in St. Louis at the age of 90.